emergency. Please give just £3 a month to help us continue this vitally important work. Call Sightsavers International now on 0800 089 2020. That's 0800 089 2020. Thank you.
Sunday, the first big derby of the season. The Manchester Derby, Sunday from 1, Sky Sports 1 and HD 1. Then, the first big head-to-head of the season. Liverpool-Chelsea. A Ford Super Sunday double. Sunday from 1, Sky Sports 1 and HD 1. For details of how to join in, call 08702 407 726.
Good afternoon. Our top story this hour. The surge is working. That's the view of an American Army general responsible for overseeing operations in northern Iraq. His comments come after 200 people were killed from a Kurdish sect, hundreds more injured by a series of bomb blasts in one of the most devastating attacks since the war started. US forces believe that Al-Qaeda is behind the bombing, the latest in a series of large-scale attacks on areas away from the capital, Baghdad, since the beginning of the US troop surge, despite the fact the surge was supposed to bring an end to the violence.
We've had Al-Qaeda operating up in this remote area for a while. This is all about them killing innocent people and getting the media attention that they desire to try to indicate that the surge is not working when in fact it is.
Also today, Britain's biggest ever lottery winner has spoken of her good fortune as she claimed her cheque for £35 million. Postal worker Angela Kelly defied odds of 76 million to 1 to win the Euro Millions jackpot. And this is how she announced the news to her son.
And I says, well, I've had a wee win on the lottery. And well, tell me how much. I says, I'll speak to you tonight. I says, I don't know yet, it's not been confirmed. So he couldn't wait, he phoned me back within about 10 minutes. Do you know how much it is yet?
When did you tell him?
That was when I told him, because he said, is it like $1 million or something? I says, no, it's 35. And he was like, I was just, didn't take a breath from John. That was it.
That must have been an amazing feeling telling your son well, he's a multi-millionaire now as well.
I know, but I wasn't thinking any of those kind of thoughts at that time. It was just a number to me then.
Cheshire's Chief Constable has told Sky News parents are to blame for teenage drinking. Peter Fahy also defended his plans for the legal drinking age to be raised from 18 to 21 to help combat antisocial behaviour, despite the government rejecting his calls. He made those comments after 3 boys appeared in court charged with the murder of a man on a street in Warrington.
The problem really is the position of alcohol in society and our attitude towards it, and the particular vulnerability that young people have towards alcohol, both being involved as victims of crime and perpetrators of crime. And so really, my comments come not only obviously from the tragic murder of Gary Newlove, but the fact of the day-to-day reality for police officers and community support officers in terms of it's the bread and butter of what they're dealing with in neighbourhood policing, the problem of alcohol and the problem of antisocial behaviour.
And the top 3 stories on the Sky News website about now. The top story there, the woman who's won £35 million on the lottery. The most popular video is the story of a baby found abandoned in a pile of rubbish. And the top discussion, the latest on the hunt for missing Madeleine McCann. All those stories and much more besides. Sky.com/news. Now, the Bush administration called it a new way forward, but critics say the recent US troop surge in Iraq has only brought more death and violence to an already devastated country. So is the surge working? Joined from central London by the author and journalist Jonathan Foreman. Also there is Kamil Ahmadi. He's an Iranian-born filmmaker who's worked and travelled throughout the region. Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. Jonathan, I suppose the unfashionable view is that the surge is working. Explain why you think that's true.
Well, why it's unfashionable or why it's supposedly not working?
Why you think it's true?
Well, I think it's true because what I've been hearing is that various key neighbourhoods in Baghdad have become more peaceful. People have begun to go out and reopen their shops and their businesses. People are returning to their homes. And people have got to remember the surge is primarily in Baghdad. It's in the capital, which has been where all the media focus has been, and into the capital of Iraq. And that's where, the surge is perhaps smaller than it should be, but it's been focused on Baghdad, and that's where it seems to be working.
Yeah. Camille Ahmadi, I suppose there's a danger that being true, that if the surge is working in Baghdad, then an unforeseen consequence of that could be that Al-Qaeda or other insurgent groups are forced out into the country at large, parts of which may have been perfectly safe for the last 3 or 4 years.
I think I agree that most of the hostility for the past 2 or 3 years has been in Baghdad or triangle, or depth of triangle, what they call it in the Sunni sort of like populated area of Tikrit or around the area. But I think now this is actually moving on a step closer to the other more peaceful areas of Iraq, for example, places which today the car bombing happened, the lorry car bombing happened, it was completely unheard of. Small villages were targeted specifically in order to destabilize the region of the Kurdish ethnic minority, come from a different religious background, which had the tendency of having more alliances with the Kurdish regional government for the past 2 or 3 years. So I think it's the insurgents are using every single tactic to move the operation, that deadly operation, into every corner of Iraq as possible.
And that's the key point, isn't it, Jonathan Foreman, that they can choose the ground on which they fight. The Americans and the soldiers from Iraq that they're training to defend that country have to go where they think best, but they can never predict in a country of that size and that many people where, in its vastness, there could be a strike.
Well, it's true they can't cover the whole country, not without many, many more soldiers, but Al-Qaeda in Iraq and other insurgent groups can't choose, they don't have complete freedom to choose. One of the reasons they have moved into this area is because it presents softer targets, and it's because they've been driven out very largely from the western provinces of Al-Anbar, the Sunni provinces, where the Sunni tribes have made an alliance with the coalition and the Iraqi government. So they have been forced to move into these softer areas. This is actually the second attack in that sort of area just on the edge of Kurdistan. There was one on a Christian village in July. But they're obviously going to do that, and it makes sense for them to do it because they both want to ethnically cleanse Iraq, and also they want to create these massive media spectaculars, so to foster the image that Iraq is falling apart, even if that's not strictly true.
From what we hear, Camille Ahmadi, this, I suppose, without wanting to sound glib, this started, or the spark for this incident could have been a dispute between two different communities, but the difference now, of course, is that there are those in Iraq who have the wherewithal, in terms of the terrorist potential that they have, to take those family feuds and religious disputes between different ethnic communities to a whole new level and kill, in this instance, more than 200 people.
Well, I think you're right, but I mean, in case of if you indicate in the previous incident on Yazidi-dominated area, which about 3 or 4 months ago, if you indicating that was an incident, sort of like based on a Kurdish teenager was converted to Islam for a reason of love, and then she was stoned to death. But prior to that, there was another dispute over the Kurdish Sunni Muslim and as well as the Kurdish Yazidi Muslim. I think the trace of persecution of Yazidis, it has quite a clear footsteps throughout of the history in the 17, 18, the 19, and for the matter of the fact, after the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire actually bombed the area where the Yazidi people were lived. So I think the Yazidi by themselves are very clear and very attractive target for the terrorists to be used in order to destabilize the region of Mosul. But let's not forget Mosul. Mosul was the place where two of Saddam Hussein's sons were found and then were killed by the American forces in the beginning of 2003. And it's one of the places which has been utmost loyal to the Iraqi government. And after the operation were in Tikrit and Fallujah, most of the insurgents or the terrorist Sunni Arabs actually came and chose to live in Mosul, and they're terrorizing the locality every day, and they're now expanding to small villages which probably nobody even can find in the map these days. So I think in a way that's overstretched the ability of the U.S. forces. This morning, President Masoud Barzani, the head of the Kurdish regional government, actually called publicly for the Peshmerga, the armed forces of the Kurdistan regional government, to rush into the area of the explosion and then help the locality. So I think you could see how complex and then complicated the situation is.
And it's always dangerous for that reason, Jonathan Foreman, to try and simplify or oversimplify such a delicate and complex situation. But there will be those people, I imagine, who look, and you've already hinted at this. They'll look at, for instance, of the existence and the protection of religious minorities within Iraq. They'll point not just to this latest group, but also to the Chaldean Christians. I mean, some suggestions that half the Chaldean Christians who lived in Iraq post-2003 have now left the country for safer climes. That's the question, isn't it? Since 2003, has it got more dangerous to be a religious minority living in Iraq? Would you have enjoyed better protection under Saddam?
Well, I think it depends which minority you were, of course. Unquestionably, Iraq's become much more dangerous for lots of people, although for certain groups of people it was extremely dangerous, or mortally dangerous when Saddam was in power. And I think that the key thing, as you both said, is that you can't measure progress one way or another by a single incident like this. All it really shows is that, yes, Al-Qaeda or whoever's done this have moved into places where there are softer targets, and the solution may be, extend the surge. There are only about 500 US troops in Mosul. It's been one of the most surprisingly quiet areas of Iraq since 2003, given that a lot of the Iraqi Army officer corps used to come from there. So, yes, you do have to move around the country. Yes, the surge may well take a while. It's only really began in June. The interim report is coming out next month. These things do take time, and there's bound to be setbacks along the way, just as there are in any war. If you went on the D-Day, terrible things happened to Allied troops. It's the way that war works.
Jonathan Foreman, Camille Ahmadi. Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. To the stock exchange now, Michael Wilson.
Thanks so much indeed. The roller coaster sort of continues, really. London stocks not as far down as they were. Been a bit of a spike up.